right, guys, we are live and welcome to the SEC Unfiltered platform. I'm your host, Dave Shumate, joined by our guy, Cole Thompson. Go give him the follow at Mr. Cole Thompson. But we are reacting to Steve Sarkisian's opening press conference and his first at SEC Media Days. And he was the fourth and final coach today, so we got four more heading in tomorrow. But just breaking down day three and what Steve Sarkisian said at his first SEC Media press conference. I would say, first of all, Cole, confidence. Me and you talked a little bit off here like we usually do beforehand. Confidence is really what comes off to me. I thought he did a phenomenal job. We talked about both of the new guys doing a good job, but like you mentioned, in different ways. This one just kind of seemed like, even to his attire, I thought I'm not a big orange guy. I'm not an orange guy at all. I thought the jacket was clean as hell. Even Jeff Banks agreed with me. Texas' special teams coordinator. He liked my tweet when I said that. He said when I was like, he's rocking the orange. It looks good. It just exuded confidence, just not just the jacket, him overall. All his answers were clear, concise, in depth, very analytical. He's confident in this team. He likes this team. Cole, what did you gather?
I think for starters is that he understands what is the ambiance of the SEC, and he emulated that immediately. There is a respect factor that must be earned. There is a respect factor that must be given, but they're not going to play second fiddle to anybody. And you watch that throughout the entire press conference, bringing up, we know that last year was last year. We know that last year was a thing that we were able to do against a coach that we have a high amount of respect for. But at the same time, this is this year. With that being said, while we will have to earn the respect of those teams in the SEC and we will have to earn the respect from them to us, we are coming off of winning a Big 12 title. We played against an SEC team. We won by double digits in an SEC stadium. We are not playing second fiddle to anybody. I love the fact that you throw out the quote, "The pride of winning tradition at the University of Texas shall not be entrusted to the weak and timid." And you know what? That is a quote that has needed to be said for years in Austin, well before he arrived after we saw the departure of Mac Brown. Because if Charlie Strong acted that way, if Tom Herman acted that way, what would we be saying about Texas right now as a juggernaut? Would we be thinking about the Big 12 in a completely different spectrum? But the fact that that is something that he has held on to since arriving, I think it helps that he comes from a background underneath Nick Saban of where you don't play second fiddle regardless of what the expectations are, but you build yourself that way. They're ready. I mean, the biggest thing that I took away from this press conference with every answer, with every dialect, with every conversation, Texas is without a doubt ready to make a stand in the SEC.
No, and he mentioned, to your point, too, they're ready to make a stand in the SEC, ready to compete for a chance to go to Atlanta. Like he mentioned, a really deep football team, best football team he's been there. And I think most would echo that. I mean, he brought his three guys, Quinn Ewers, Kelvin Banks, Janae Barron. Across the board, he mentioned he thinks they could go seven deep at the receiver. He said, I don't know if we play seven, right? I don't know if that's going to be our rotation, but we could go up to seven deep. Across the board, I mean, I need to ask you, Cole, your thoughts. I haven't heard you say this yet. You high on Quinn Ewers this year, heading into the year?
It's not that I'm high on Quinn Ewers. It's that I think Quinn Ewers is the X factor. This team will live and breathe by the way he plays, and there's going to be a lot of question marks surrounding behind him because of everyone's going to be sitting here saying, I mean, like, literally, it's read it out. Who's going to ask the first Arch Manning question? First question. First question was about Arch Manning. When you hear the way that Sark was talking about in his preamble about Quinn, how he's acted, how he's matured, how he's now taken over this team. But the question is on Arch. So I don't really think that it's a factor of will Quinn be good. There's always this rule that I have whenever it comes to breaking down film for college players. Number one, treat them like they are Saturday players and never look at them as Sunday players until they officially announce they're going to the draft. Because when you start looking at players as only guys who are going to be in the NFL, then you're going to be really disappointed by their on-field play, and that's not what I want to do. There are legends of Saturday. There are quality players on Sunday. It's fine to be that way. If I get quality version of Quinn the same way I saw last year, they're going to be a team that goes far because they do have the weaponry. You know, it's one of those things where it's a quality versus quantity. Last year they had both. I think that this year they have more quantity than quality at wide receiver, but that does not mean that they are short of temperament players. And eventually by the season's end, we may or see one or two guys break out the same way we saw Adonai Mitchell break out.
No, I agree. It sounds like Quinn Ewers is taking on more of a professional standpoint in his preparation, getting his body ready. I saw Sark mentioned it today, getting his body right with the nutritionist, but I saw he was like not eating Chick-fil-A anymore. And I know people laugh about that. They'll make GIFs, memes, whatever about it, memes, whatever it is about it. But that is serious. I mean, if you're committed to a whole off season of changing your body, putting the right stuff in your body, treating your body like a temple, that's going to make a big difference. That is going to make a big difference. And especially for a guy, as you know, Cole, he hasn't been healthy. He hadn't made it through an entire season. I mean, history would tell us we see Arch Manning this year at some point start a game. History tells me that. But it sounds like Quinn Ewers is taking those next steps to doing everything he can. Obviously, there's freak injuries out there, but everything he can possibly to put his body in the best position to potentially go play anywhere from 12 to 13 to even 17 games. And I like that Sark brought up again, just you can tell you're talking to a really bright person talking about, hey, like, we're going to play guys early this year because it is going to be a potential. We're hoping we're playing 16 to 17 games this year. Like, we're hoping we play 17 games because we're in Atlanta and we make it all the way to the national title and hopefully win it. But you can tell he was like, yeah, we're going to have to – they've talked about that as a staff. And speaking of staff, I want to hear your comment on this. I think this is we don't talk about as a whole. And again, I'm newer to the media.
I know what I'm about to bring up too. Yeah.
I'm newer to the media than you are and from other people. But I don't think we talk about it, just like we don't talk about special teams a lot in the offseason because I don't think it gets a lot of clicks. But continuity at the staff position, it's phenomenal. I tweeted that. Jeff Banks retweeted it. Granted, we have a relationship from our
I'd say at this point, are you guys just like drinking buddies? Because
we were at A&M. Now, A&M, Texas fans don't hold that against them. Did a phenomenal job. Left to go to Alabama once someone left. But my point being, they have Kyle Flood back. They have Kevin Milwee, who's a quarterback analyst, a guy that has a big say, right-hand guy. Yeah, sorry, AJ Milwee. That was there with Sark as well at Alabama. Talking about Pete Kwiatkowski, and then we mentioned Jeff Banks as the special teams coordinator. They have a lot of staff continuity. I mean, they lost Bo Davis. That's really it. That's really it. So, I mean, you bring that in. They got their quarterback. I mean, there's a lot to like about this team, and we'll get into the schedule here for the end, but I think the schedule is very manageable too. It's like you said, Cole, I think you hit hammer on that. I am very impressed, and I didn't really take anything from a negative glass half empty kind of way about this press conference.
Texas never would act that way, though. They never did when they were going off of 5-7 finishes, which, by the way, I think was a really big testament to Sark to be able to admit, listen, 5-7 in Austin, Texas sucks, and it sucks when it's in the Big 12. It is just the worst feeling alive when you are the brand, the flagship of the state. You are the program that people look to make fun of or to praise or to think that this is finally a year where you're BAC. No, you're not. And now you're going to have that type of energy in the SEC. Yeah, I think that having that ability to understand that feeling is going to transpire to new heights in the SEC, 100% a big deal. But the continuity factor is such a big element. You know, you look at these teams. Nick Saban was a probably perfect example of this, where he was willing to adapt to change, except on defense. Whoever was the defensive coordinator understood immediately, this is my defense. We're running it a certain way.
In our terminology.
Yeah, you're going to learn the terminology. We're going to be having this. But there was always that familiarity, and that familiarity was allowing a lot of players to be able to buy into saying, oh, we're right back to where we were this past year. Well, there's a lot of new players that are joining Texas, but there's a lot of new players who are stepping up for Texas. Guys like Jonte Cook that we have not even brought up. Guys like Gunnar Helm, who was specifically named by Steve Sarkisian. The offensive line's got great depth to replace Christian Jones. They know that there's going to be a bigger role for C.J. Baxter and Jaden Blue after losing JB to the NFL. So it's like there's a continuity factor when it comes to the players, but there's also a continuity factor of the staff understands. We're doing the exact same thing with the exact same personnel. The logo is changing. Our energy and our tempo and attention to detail in practice is not.
No, I know 100%. It's just a key factor. Guys feel more comfortable going through a whole year. Strength and conditioning coach is the same. Everybody they can start venturing into new stuff because the basics. Everybody knows the basics. He mentioned they have 25 leaders where he felt what? I forget if he mentioned his first year going into last year, probably his first year. If he felt like they really only had about 3 leaders when Rashawn Johnson was there. That's how I remembered it.
But you have to remember that the guys that he has as leaders, he brought there and he specifically named and he called out for certain ways. I mean, Jahdae Barron was one that I was just flabbergasted that he's coming back for another year. I did not think that he was going to. I thought for sure he was done after last season, go out on top. I mean, to have a guy that's been here through every bit of the growing pains and also seen when Texas was on its rise and back down to its collapse underneath Tom Herman, that's a win. The way he talks about Calvin Banks, I mean, I remember watching Calvin Banks when he was in high school, coming out of Humboldt, and hearing the stories about the way that he carried himself. He was acting like a 20-year-old at 16, the way he took care of his body. I mean, if you're emulating anybody in that locker room, and Sark says you want to emulate an offensive lineman, you're doing something right. And then you got the quarterback. And there's probably, I would say, about another dozen leaders that he wouldn't have time to name that simply have maybe not seen the reps, but have been through the due diligence and the expectations that are set in Austin that probably eerily simulate what we know in Tuscaloosa, which, again, you hear it from the guy himself talking about how his course of his career altered overnight when Nick Saban hired him. And I think that even though he has not taken the entire playbook, he has definitely taken a chapter, but the chapter's not on the on-field play. It's the internal status play, which is the big reason why Texas is where it is right now.
No, yeah. I mean, 2 points. I mean, Sark's the only coach ever to be a head coach in the Iron Bowl and in the Red River shootout. So
for now.
And then also, he's one of the few coaches that actually hand manages the salary cap, which I think is incredible. Which, hell, if I was a head coach, I'd want to do it too. I'd want to know how much I'm paying guys. Sam Pittman doesn't give a crap about how much, but I would like to know how much each guy makes, have my own document. I think that's awesome. All hands on deck. You're right. Again, I think it's easy to come here and say, Texas, Sark's only had one 10-win season in his entire career, going back to his days, at SC, Washington, and including Texas. But I think this is their guy. I'm not ready. I want to see it this year, but I'm at BAC right now, waiting on K to finish up this year for Texas to say they're back.
I've been that way for a while.
Yeah, I think Sark's just the guy. I think he's going to ultimately get it done. Just because Charlie Strong, Tom Herman didn't get it done doesn't mean Steve Sarkisian didn't. I think he's the guy. I mean, I think he's going to be the guy. I think Texas is going to be in contention in the playoffs every year to win a national championship and also an SEC championship. For whatever reason, I think a lot of the media, especially the Southeast people, just want to pick on them for whatever reason. Again, I don't know why. Me and you've talked about it. I even think Oklahoma is on that way too. I think it's going to be more bad news bears for the mid-tier SEC teams than it is going to be for Oklahoma and Texas.
Two things real fast. Number one, do you think that Sark's image would change if he did not get fired for off-the-field incidents that happened at USC? Because I did feel like he was building at least something out there. Maybe it wouldn't have been to an elite level of college football playoff, but 10-win seasons on the horizon, Rose Bowl appearances, the guys that he was starting to recruit, initially, and Clay Helton kind of took a lot of those names and said same roster, same overall energy. Do you feel like the imagery of him would be different right now to where we're not having this conversation? In fact, most people in the SEC are saying not, look at what Sark did last year in the Big 12. They're saying, shit, look at what Sark did last year in the Big 12.
Yeah, I'd say his imagery is probably different, but he'd probably tell you, and he kind of talks about it. You can tell he kind of gets a little emotional about it. It's probably the best thing that ever happened to him going
I think so.
In rehab. And he's probably not the guy, he isn't the same coach he is today. Probably ain't managing a salary cap, doing all that. He just wants to be a play caller. I'm just an offensive head coach. Now he's an everything head coach from top to bottom. I'm CEO, business type guy. So I think for the best it would be, but to your point, without going into details of that, I think it would be looked at a little differently, but I don't think he'd be at the level that he is today. So that's goes to show you why things happen for a reason.
Let me ask you the next part. So people are talking about how, Texas and Oklahoma, they're getting everyone's crapping on them and that they're carrying themselves in this big light. For starters, it's a very, 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 very small brand of Texas people that are carrying themselves. If you live on social media and only live on social media and don't ever go outside and touch grass, like some people that are doing political comments nonstop, you would realize that there are enough Texas fans that really are not offended by the horns down logo. They are understanding that we belong in the conference because we've earned the right to be here, but we know we got to earn respect. We don't act like we're going to be running through everybody and everyone's going to have to kiss our hands. That's not them, but they are built that way. They are built to be able to get to that point. And the fact of the matter is that now with that SEC logo attached to their name, you look at what Texas and Oklahoma were doing in the Big 12, recruiting, transfer portal, NIL purposes. They were already going to be players. I think that the opinion of where the Big 12 is whenever it comes to college football playoff would drastically differ, especially when it comes to representation for every conference, if they stuck around. But now that they're joining the SEC, it's only going to explode. And the difference between Texas and Oklahoma right now, and I've made this abundantly clear, as much as I like Oklahoma, the reason why I like Texas more this year is because of the offensive line. And he's got offensive linemen who are built to do that right now. But don't think for 1 second that Oklahoma isn't going to get there. And then
Sark had a head start in a year. Yeah. It makes sense.
And also you got to realize, Dave, when you talk about Arkansas and South Carolina and Mississippi State and maybe even Missouri a little bit, and if you really want to go that far, Kentucky, those are middle tier programs to where you feel like once every 5 years, they're going to beat up on a team, just like they do against Georgia, just like they do against Alabama, just like they do against Florida, just like they do against LSU. But they're going to lose recruiting battles. They're going to lose transfer portal battles. They're going to lose NIL deals, and they're going to not be able to afford the right depth behind players, and they're going to sit and wait and learn and adapt the way that they do at every other major program. That's what Texas and Oklahoma showed me in the last 2 days, is that they are here and that they belong.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel good about it. I mean, again, you don't win games at a press conference or at SEC Media Days, but I think you can definitely help yourself. They both, especially Steve Sarkisian, in my opinion, and obviously Brent Venables, I think he was the most impressive guy yesterday. But I think you mentioned it in a good way to open up the segment. In different ways, they did. Both positive. Both things can be true, but in different ways. But specifically today and for this segment, Steve Sarkisian, I mean, I think he won the day today, not saying that Kalen DeBoer had to go win the day or Jeff Levy or even Billy Napier had to go win the day. I just think Sark's presence up there looked confident, looked clean with that orange jacket. Like I said, I'm not an orange guy. I just think overall, though, I'm pretty fired up about it. I mean, really, going to a schedule, because we always usually end it off talking a little bit about schedule.
Real fast. What did you think of his comments on Red River? Because there's so many.
Oh, I thought it was a phenomenon. I'm glad you brought that up.
There's so many people that don't understand why this game is the way that it is.
Yeah, I've never been. I want to go to the atmosphere. Dude, I thought his response to it was freaking awesome.
Yeah.
The whole football, like, hey, I mean, shoot, he's been the head coach of both the Iron Bowl and the Red River shootout.
He's been Apple Cup. He's done USC, UCLA.
Yeah, he's been a part of a lot of rivalries. He said that, he stated them. But I thought his answer too, he really, but immediately locked back into football was like, yeah, I mean, it's split halfway. I mean, again, I thought what he mentioned too, and a lot of people, I knew this, but I haven't been to the game, is the locker rooms are right there next to it. It's a very it's very personal, like your intimate setting right before a lot of emotional guys before they head out into the gridiron. But he mentioned immediately, hey, first half's a home game for you offensively. Second half is a away game or vice versa. One of the halves is going to be a road game. One's going to be a away game. And we had a bunch of false starts, and I learned that the hard way my first year. I thought that was cool immediately to lock back in and just being like, oh, man. And so, you may get some corny cliche answers from some other people. But I thought you're right. I thought his answer, I'm glad you reminded me of that. That was a phenomenal response there.
I thought that the biggest takeaway from that is that somebody who has seen the Iron Bowl and has known what the Iron Bowl is like, especially in a road atmosphere, because you got to remember that they played on the road in 2020. They played on the road.
19.
Was it 19? They played on the road, right? Yeah, 19 they played on the road. So that was the Bo Nix year. So he knows what it's like to play at Jordan-Hare Stadium, and we've talked about this yesterday. We know that Jordan-Hare is one of the most daunting places to go play a game. But when it is humming, not just rivalry week, but when it is humming overall, it is just its own entity that nobody else can duplicate. But I have seen Red River up close and in person. I have been to the Texas State Fair. I have been there for pre-games. I have been there at 5 o'clock in the morning, pouring an ice cold glass of Tito's. Like, I know what that ambiance is like. I know what walking into the stadium is like. I know what that hostility leaving the parking lot with an L is like. Everything he said was 100% correct. And probably the biggest thing that I took away that just was so true. You're running out of the stadium, and the first thing you're trying to do is get over to your fan base. Because the second that you walk out to those boos that is clamoring, because that's always Oklahoma side, you just want to get over to your people because of it will eat you alive. And honestly, I think that's why when people talk about where this rivalry ranks, I love all the rivalries in the SEC. I do. I love Third Saturday in October. I love World Largest Outdoor Cocktail Party. I love Old Rivalry of the South. I love the Iron Bowl. There is just something special about Red River. And there will be SEC purists who watch this and say, you have no idea what you're talking about. How dare you go ahead and say you're an SEC guy going to a college in the SEC? It's different. It is. It's the one time where they talk about moving games to bigger atmospheres to add in more of an ambiance. You can't move that out of the Cotton Bowl. That is the one game where it is a neutral site location and it has to stay there. It has to be there, and you have to experience it. If you are an SEC fan and your team is not playing the weekend of Red River, buy a ticket and go. Make that a family vacation. I promise you, if you are a college football junkie, you will understand everything that Sark is talking about from a fan perspective on the outside looking in.
Yeah, especially right now, especially with these two guys, man. And hey, before we move to the schedule, Cole, some Auburn fans are going to shoot you. They are so sensitive about calling Jordan. It's spelled Jordan, but pronounced Jordan. That's a big show. Oh, they'll let you freaking know it. It's Jordan, not Jordan. But moving to the 2024 schedule for the Horns, I mean, Cole, I'll be honest with you. Look, I think this is a pretty manageable schedule. Especially conference play. I mean, me and you've broken down top schedules for each team on the Texas Sports Unfiltered show. But, I mean, at a conference, open up with Colorado State. I think at Michigan, I think the line right now is 5.5. I'm very confident Texas goes in there and wins. 11 a.m. Central Time. It's a lot of the kids that all went into Bryant-Denny Stadium last year at night and handled that. I don't think they're going to be spooked by the big house. UTSA, Jeff Traylor and the boys, that could be a sleepy game. Texas is going to win that game, though.
But like sleepy means like Wyoming, where it's okay.
Correct. It's ugly. Then trying to get out. Yeah. ULM win. And then the conference schedule here, Cole. Mississippi State at home, bye week. And here's the back-to-back ones right here. We're talking about the Red River Shootout, Oklahoma and Dallas, Georgia at home, at Vandy, bye week, Florida at home, at Arkansas, Kentucky at home, and then the big one at Texas A&M at Kyle Field to wrap up the season. I mean, I'll be shocked here, Cole. I'm going to call my shot here. I mean, I've been pretty open about it. I have Georgia, Texas in Atlanta. I have Texas actually winning the SEC heads up in the regular season, but Georgia getting them in Atlanta. But I think Texas goes 11-1. I'm pretty confident that Cole, would you be shocked let me ask you this, on a scale of 1 through 10, with 10 being the biggest surprise of your life, how surprised would you be if I called you at the end of November and said, Cole, Texas is 9-3?
I'd be pretty sure. I would be moderately shocked, because if I do wonder about that game in week 2, I do. I always will. It's a non-conference.
Yeah, that's just me. I'm confident in it, but I think there's fair concerns. For sure. It's
a non-conference game. I think that's always going to be a concern. I also got to look at the last game of the year, Lone Star Showdown. You heard Sark talk about it. There's going to be fans that are younger that don't understand what that rivalry is, but the players who decided on going to those schools usually went on recruiting trips together. One ended up it's like the Montagues and Capulets and Romeo and Juliet. One decided to go to A&M, one decided to go to Texas. I think the Georgia game is one that you always are going to circle, because it's Georgia. It's the standard in the SEC until Alabama proves it or somebody else proves it. And I can tell you right now, I don't give a care in the world at all what anybody says about Oklahoma. I don't care what anybody says about their schedule, what anybody says about their offensive line. You heard it from the mouth himself. They will wake up and play that game as if it is the final game. You throw records out the window. You throw expectations out the window.
You want to know something to hammer home, put a cherry on top of your statement here? That's the one loss I have for Texas.
Yeah, and you know what? To me, that's it. Like honestly, that's the game I'm most wondering.
11-1, they lose. I think Brent Venables is going to be a pain in their side a little bit.
I honestly, you know how Gus Malzahn was a pain in the side for Nick Saban.
Yeah,
I think that might be Gus. I think that might be his Gus Malzahn.
Doesn't mean Texas isn't going to be good or win the SEC. I just think you're right. It always seems like a coach always kind of has that game they will win.
It's not even that, Dave. It's just like, I don't care what anybody says. You don't understand what this rivalry is. You don't unless you've experienced it or you've seen it up close in person. If there ever was a game where you just throw records out the door and say 3 hours, best man win, this is it. And it doesn't matter. And you've seen it on both sides before. You're
right. A true rival, the best team doesn't always win. I tweeted about it there. How many times in the Iron Bowl in my life, in the Alabama-Auburn game, and Nick Saban talked about this when he was still coaching, that the better team didn't really win that. There's not many times I can think of in my life where the better team overall. I mean, I'll have my boss at Alabama still tweet me saying 2013 Alabama was better. You can make that argument all you want, but Auburn went on to win the SEC and play for a national championship and had the same record as Alabama and won the head-to-head. It's tough for me to just straight up say they were better. On paper, they have more NFL guys, sure. But other than that, maybe 19. Again, to your point, the Texas-Oklahoma game is a true throw the records out the book.
It has to be, and it always is.
The Alabama-Auburn game, the Iron Bowl, there's not been a lot of significant upsets.
Okay, timeout. Now, the Alabama Iron Bowl, when that game's played, it hasn't had significance at Bryant-Denny.
It's
Jordan Hare.
Auburn hadn't won it Bryant-Denny since 2010 when Cam was there.
I was saying when Cam won it. So yeah, again, I see Sean in the comment section. If Sark goes 1-3 against OU, he's on the hot seat. No, he's not. No, not in today's college football, when you can go 11-1, win the SEC in year one, get a bye in the first round, go to the national championship, and you still lose to Oklahoma. No, you're not on the hot seat. And that's Dave's way of thinking. I personally think Texas right now goes 10-2. I think there's going to be a matchup to where they aren't going to wake up in time. They are going to be trudging at one point. Maybe it is to Georgia. Maybe it's on the road against Michigan. Maybe it's against Texas A&M. I got them going 10-2. I still have them as a playoff team. I like the direction that Texas is in. I think Texas is confident. If Texas has the offense that I think it can, they're a team I don't want to face in the postseason, regardless of what seed they are. I can promise you that.
Saban talked about it. They're for lack of a better term, they're a bitch to prepare for.
Yeah, they are. And
you gotta show your team so much information, so many clips and cut ups that they're like, oh my God, this is what they do when they go 3-by-1, but they could also do this when they factor in the tight end, they add an extra tackle. They're a total bitch to prepare for, which it takes away from your preparation time. I think people forget about that at times. Cole, I need to ask you, Cole, who are your two losses?
Right now, it's back-to-back weeks, Oklahoma and Georgia. Right now, those would be my two losses right now. I just feel like that Georgia is going to be a little bit more prepared. I think the emotion of that game in Dallas is going to take out a little bit early on, to where it's going to be hard to recuperate. Here's what I will say, though. Do not be shocked. Like the way that we talk about wild card teams. So we're going to do this probably on a one-off later on. My wild card team this year is South Carolina. I could see them ending up going 9-3. I could see them going 4-8. I could see any one of those things happen.
So South Carolina is that team for you that has the biggest gap in ceiling.
But the thing is that wild card for me in the winners bracket is Texas. Because you can tell me right now that they're going to be 12-0. I will not be shocked in the single slightest. They are that well built. And when you have Nick Saban talking about this team being as prepared as possible for the start of this season, when you have Nick Saban talking about where this roster has resided, adding in the players via the portal and on the recruiting trail to be right on the same token as Texas, around the same token as every other SEC team, it's not going to shock me. I don't think it's going to happen, but is it going to shock me? Absolutely not. Not even a little bit.
Cole, before we get out of here, if you had to say a sleepy game for them, take away out Michigan, Oklahoma, and Georgia, sleepy game for them, what would you say is one? I'm going to give mine. I'm going to give Kentucky the week before the A&M game at home. Maybe you could maybe factor in Arkansas, but I'm just going to go. I feel like that game for both A&M and Texas A&M plays at Auburn, I believe, the week before they play Texas. And obviously Texas plays Kentucky. I could see ugly performances by both A&M and Texas the week before that, because it's going to be so hyped up. But if I had to go sleeper, and I want to hear yours, I'm going to go Kentucky that week before at home.
I'll go a little bit different. I think Arkansas. I think on the road playing in that game.
That was my other. If I didn't say Kentucky, I'd have said that.
I think Arkansas probably. There's just something about, and you heard him even bring up, we're renewing a rivalry. And I thought it was really important that people who don't understand about what the Southwest was and where the Big Eight was and where these two conferences were and where you had the Southwest at one point, where this team, where you had all the Texas schools in Arkansas. This was a very big game back in the day for Texas.
Arkansas hates Texas.
And Arkansas hates Texas. The way that some people say, like, oh, Texas fans pity A&M. No, they really pity Arkansas fans.
Yeah.
They really pity Arkansas. So I think that that's also a game where at this point we may know the status moving forward of Sam Pittman. Is he back? Is this going to be the one to where he says, if I win this game, thank God I go out on top? So I think that that's a game to where they might be a little bit sleepy. Yeah, I will say Arkansas. I will say after today, I feel a little bit better about Florida, but I still think a sleepy game is Arkansas because it is a road game too. And that's probably going to be a road night game if they can make it happen.
Cole, anything else to add before we get out of here?
Everybody in the SEC, if you're watching this and just trying to check out the channel, Texas and Oklahoma have arrived, and they're not going to be an easy task. Now, for Texas and Oklahoma fans, don't be complaining when you see horns down at major stadiums. But for every other team that's in the SEC, Texas just kind of showed up and said, yeah, we mean business, and we're about ready to show it.
I don't have anything else to add either. My guy Cole said it. But for my guy Cole, speaking of him, give him the follow at Mr. Cole Thompson. I am your host, Dave Shumate. that wraps us up for today, guys. We will have a recap with our guy, Chris Phillips, who will actually be shooting from the Texas Sports Unfiltered table there at the Omni in downtown Dallas. We'll be doing a reaction show for the day 3 just in total. So check that out when we premiere that. But, guys, we'll see you tomorrow. We got 4 more last day on Thursday, guys. It's been a blast so far. But for my guy, Cole Thompson, I'm Dave Shumate. You have a phenomenal evening.